Well, hello, everyone. My name is Timber Helwig, and I work on the team here at Ronald Blue Trust in Houston, Texas. Welcome back to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life webinar series. Today, I have the honor of hosting a conversation with Peter Greer, the president and CEO of Hope International. Hope International is a global Christ-centered economic development organization serving throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Eastern Europe. And as an advocate for the church's role in missions and alleviating extreme poverty, Peter has co-authored over 10 books, including Rooting for Rivals, which we will touch on today. Hope International is one of our ministry partners here at Ronald Blue Trust, and we are just thrilled and could not be more excited about the work that God is doing through them. And we're just so happy to have you join us today, Peter, and excited to dive into this conversation together.
Thanks, Timber. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, today we are going to be talking about collaboration over competition, really hitting on a lot of what you've talked about in your book, Rooting for Rivals. And if anyone has not checked that out or seen that, we'll be sure to provide a link to that book and where you can find it. It's absolutely incredible. Everyone would be better for reading that book. So kind of to start us off, Peter, could you share briefly about Hope International and your mission and the work that you guys are doing?
Absolutely. So Hope International is an organization that is actively trying to alleviate extreme poverty around the world. So we work in 16 countries. We serve entrepreneurs and provide investment capital along with training and coaching to help them start or expand small businesses. And we do that with Jesus at the very center. So discipleship and the summary of what we do, it's trying to bring the hope of Jesus to communities around the world through offering the tools necessary for individuals to have a job and to work their way out of poverty. So Jesus and a job is what we're all about in the places where we serve.
I love that. That is so sweet. And you guys do that so well. And it's incredible. In this book, we're going to talk more about it, but in this book, it's just saturated with stories of those redemption moments and just the awesome work that you guys are doing. So as I mentioned, the title of our discussion today is Collaboration Over Competition. And we've mentioned the book that you wrote about this or co-authored. What are some of the common reasons that organizations fail to collaborate? And how have you seen them overcome this or work to move towards overcoming that?
Yeah, so really just a little bit more of the background is in some ways making an argument that we need to do more together, or not we need to, but we could accomplish more together than we could if we all operated in our own little silos. That argument doesn't need to be made. that just makes sense. The question that we wanted to explore is, so what is it that stops us from having an open-handed posture, from being more collaborative? What is it that gets in the way? And just real personally, what is it that causes me to look at some other organizations that I know we could and perhaps should be partnering with, and to identify them as rivals? And part of it is in the work that I do with Hope International. Even before I joined Hope, I would be asked questions by a lot of, well-meaning people that would ask a simple question, but hey, Peter, tell me how you're different from, and then they'd fill in the blank with another organization in a similar space with a similar mission, doing similar work.
Right.
And if we're not careful, we can take the bait and to say, let me give you the argument for Hope International by making an argument with a veneer of Christian nicety, by making an argument against these other organizations. And I just think that is so damaging to the collective impact of all of us. And worse, I think that is so damaging to the actual work that we have in common, which is not just to build an organization, but ultimately to point people to Jesus. So how can we do that? How can we do that more? So our research kind of methodology, we followed what Jim Collins did in Good to Great, of reaching out to industry experts and then asking them, who are the most generous, open-handed, collaborative leaders that you know within your sector? And then there are some names that kept coming up again and again and again. So we had over 200 hours of interviews, conversations on
Wow.
this topic with a variety of leaders. And there were some themes that came up. And just real quick, the two that I thought I'd
Yeah.
mention here that came up again and again is this question of, do you believe in a world of abundance or scarcity?
Mm,
If you believe in a world of scarcity, it's impossible for you to root for your rival. It's impossible for you to celebrate the wins of others because you feel like that came at your expense.
mm,
But if we believe that God has enough for the work that he has called us into, if we believe that someone else's win is not necessarily at our expense, but actually part of a bigger story, that opens up our hands and changes our approach. So the first formative question is, do we believe in a world of abundance or scarcity? And then the second question is, do we believe that our mission ends at the boundary of our organization, or are we invited into a bigger mission? And I think for those of us that are followers of Jesus, we believe we have a bigger mission than just what our organization is. We believe there is a global movement that is happening, and we have the privilege of being a small part of it. But there are so many other parts, as the Apostle Paul writes about. It's a body. It's
mm.
you can't say to another part, I don't need you, or you're not as important. Let me tell you about why I really am doing the important work. There's no space or place for that. So
Yeah.
two framing questions. Do we believe in a world of abundance or scarcity? And then the second question is, do we believe in that our mission is about our little club, or about the bigger and better and more expansive kingdom of God?
Yeah. Oh man, that'll preach to so many levels, just in terms of who you work for or just your day-to-day life. I feel like, I mean, we are a fallen people. We are sinful. The Bible tells us very clearly that we're broken. And I feel like what you're talking about is just going to prompt such an active day by day, moment by moment, remembering it's not about me. It's not about my agenda. It's not about what I'm trying to do, even if what I do is really good and has a hand in the overall mission of what Jesus is trying to do, but that it's about him and that my time is better spent elevating the work of other people and seeing what I can do to help. So that is so challenging. I love that you brought up those points. And I think we are naturally wired to live in a scarcity mentality. And so it is a fight to look at it from a different perspective. So, your book documents several case studies of organizations who've collaborated in remarkable ways, and you kind of just hit on that in terms of asking about leaders who were doing that. I'd love to hear you just share a couple of your favorite examples of what those organizations have done.
Timber, one of the best parts about writing this book was actually after it was released, having so many other examples of people that reached out and said, hey, did you know about this group coming
Mm.
together, or this sector? And so
Yeah.
while there are a small number of case studies that are in the book, there are a lot more that we have learned in subsequent times after it was been released. And it really is fun. I really do believe there is a greater movement of collaboration, of openness. And I overall am really encouraged by that. But one of the most significant stories that we do talk about in the book is really the whole movement with Bible translation. And there was one foundation executive that talked about being proposals for funding from 3 different organizations that were trying to raise money to translate the Bible into the same language for the same people group. Now, that's not a very efficient use of resources.
Yeah.
Why would I fund 3 organizations doing essentially the same thing? That doesn't seem like a
Mhm.
good use of funds. And the worst part was it sounded like the organizations did not know that anyone else was working on that. So there were silos, organizations, and maybe not a lot of conversation. And so a group of supporters and a group of now 11 leaders of different organizations committed to gathering together once a month for as long as it takes to not just see a translation done, but to see the Bible translated into every language on earth as quickly as possible.
Wow.
That goal is impossible for any one organization to accomplish, but they
Yep.
started saying, let's go after that. They started having joint fundraising events. They started having open sourcing of information and sharing staff and time to grow in relationships and prioritize that. And the result is that they were on track to see the Bible translated into every language on earth by the year 2150. Now, only a few years into this, they believe that that is going to happen by the year 2033. They took 117 years off of the pace of progress because they were willing to say, let's have a bigger goal that unites us together. Let's watch what happens. And again, that is not just a story about Bible translation. I believe
Right.
that is a story about every space, every sector, about
Yeah.
what would happen if we really did find ways to become each other's biggest advocates and fans and start being more collaborative and open-handed in the way that we interact with each other.
Yeah. Oh, that is so encouraging. I love that so much. So, in terms of your role at Hope International and leading the charge there, what steps have you guys taken to implement this mindset and mentality through the work Hope is doing?
And one of the benefits of writing and even having a conversation with you today is this is something that needs to be brought to mind regularly. The default posture is, oh, there's not enough. We got to hunker down. We got to
Mhm.
focus inward.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe what this other organization did. And so I think regularly to be reminded about this topic and truly to say, let's keep growing. We've not arrived yet. Let's keep growing to be a more collaborative organization. So what does that look like? A couple things, just real practically. The first is open sourcing everything that we have. So we made all of our tools, manuals, approaches. We took trademarks off and said, we want to make everything available to others for free so that if you're launching another nonprofit, you don't have to start from scratch. We'll tell you exactly what we're doing and
Mhm.
make it available for free for anyone. So you can go to hopeinternational.org/resources, and that's an online portal. And if there's anything else that we have that might be helpful, we love sharing it. The second thing is we do not start or launch new programs in places where there is another organization, another Christ-centered organization doing great work. We'd say that seems inefficient. That's like translating the Bible into the same language for the same people group. That doesn't seem wise. So
Yeah.
we have a number of different partnerships. And instead of saying, what about the brand of Hope International? We don't ask that question. We say,
Mm.
what's going to accomplish the most significant impact for the families that we serve to the glory of God? Like that's what we want to have in front. So we have a lot of partnerships and we talk about the network of Hope International, not just the organizations that we founded or started. And then relatedly, we also have a what we call Savings Group Multiply, where there is this church-based approach to savings groups, grassroots economic development. And so we end up training other organizations. So organizations like Compassion International and Care for AIDS and Lifeway and Life in Abundance. So a number of different organizations that we go in and we partner with them to train their staff how to implement the model methodology. And then we cheer them on as we do this. So I could go on, but those are some of the ones that come to mind about how we're trying to live into this idea. And just, I mean, the irony, right, is we actually don't believe there are any rival organizations. We believe
Yeah.
there is an enemy, but it is not another Christian nonprofit organization doing
Right.
good work. So
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to love and support and encourage and be in relationship with each other.
It's awesome. So good. So, kind of taking a different turn. So, you've got your team and you're leading your team with that mentality, but what type of an impact has that collaborative approach had on your donor relationships?
Yeah, so I'd answer that in two ways. And the first way is that in some ways, that was not part of our thinking at all when we came into this. The impact on the donor community was just, we believe this was right. We believe this is what Jesus was praying for the night before he went to the cross in
Mhm.
John chapter 17. We believe that this is the right approach. And in some ways, it was a decision that was made independent of the impact that that might have on funding. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that this just makes sense. And there has been a whole lot of positive feedback and encouragement to say, keep on going. And, you know, some people, I think of one Texas family that was really energized about that. And they said, we love what you're doing to train other organizations, and let's do a matching grant specifically for that. So you can have more resources to hire more staff to do more training of other organizations on that. And this is whether it's Bible translation or Hope International, I have
Right.
yet to find an example of an organization that started living with more open-handedness and did not see actually more resources come in. And in some ways, you might think that's counterintuitive. Well, wouldn't that dilute? Wouldn't that
Right.
make less? But I think it's exactly the opposite. I think that it makes sense to supporters to say, yeah. And just one real small
Yeah.
example that I'd love is there's one foundation that now has changed their application, and they only will fund organizations that are sharing what they're learning with others or actively in partnership with others. They said it's that important to us that we are not just investing in one organization, but we want to get maximum benefit. We want to get
Mhm.
maximum impact. And that does not result from you taking our funding and doing your programs and not being willing to share the good and the bad, not being in relationship with others. So I've been excited, not just the deeper friendships that it's caused among organizations, but I've been really encouraged the way that the donor community as well has said, let's do what we can to
Mhm.
encourage, to foster more collaboration, partnership. It just makes sense, more efficiency, more impact for the same amount of investment.
Wow. That's amazing. And you could almost argue in terms of the mission, if you're clinging so tightly to your own mission that you fly by opportunities to do more with that mission and with the resources that you have, that you're not really clinging to your mission anymore. You're clinging to a self-serving, you know, individualistic, this is what I want to do and this is what we're going to do. We're going to say no to anything that's not this. And that could mean at times saying no to things that would actually help you live out your mission in a more effective, fruitful way. That is so challenging. And I love that you have seen there be such a fruit that comes from that mentality. And if this is what the Lord is saying, and if this is what Jesus is advocating, that we would be one, it makes sense that when we take steps to do that, that he's going to bless that. He's not going to say, this is my desire for you, and I'm not going to meet the needs that you have when you lean into that. He's absolutely going to come alongside of us and prepare and provide us with what we need to do those things. So I love that testimony that you have. So like Hope International, Ronald Blue Trust is connected to many ministry leaders and organizations with important and worthy missions. And we're constantly blown away by the incredible work that we see others doing across the world. And we also have business owners in our audience who support various ministries through their company partnerships as well. So knowing we can't partner with everyone, how do you consider who to say yes to, who to say no to from a collaboration standpoint?
Absolutely. And just because there's another organization working in the same country, that does not mean that there is that means there must be a partnership there, that might make sense. But I do think it's possible to have a posture and approach which starts from the sense of saying we want to bless everyone. We want to be a team player and support everyone. That does not mean we enter into a letter of agreement or memorandum of understanding and have a partnership you can only have. But I think about it a little bit like a funnel, that we want to encourage everyone. Anything that we have that could be helpful, we want to make that available. We want to encourage everyone. But then there has to be this argument of saying, what is it that would make 1 + 1 greater than 2? Like
Hmm.
it needs to make
Yeah.
sense that there actually is a benefit of coming together, and that's not always the case. So we can be cheering on, and we cheer on a lot of organizations. That does not mean that we are in partnership with all of them for the reasons that you mentioned. So then that discernment process of saying, what is it that when we come together, that we can do more together than we can do on our own? But I have to say, just one huge benefit of this is I think that there was a time when nonprofits thought that they had to do everything. And especially when a donor would come and say, I like what you're doing in water, would you now expand into child development or something else. And in the past, and maybe this is rooted in a worldview of scarcity, but the answer was always yes. If a donor asks me to do something, then yes, I'm going to do it. If we expand beyond our area of core competency because we have an inability to say no, what we've just said yes to is that we're going to do everything with mediocrity.
Hmm.
If we try to do everything, we are going to do everything poorly. So
Hmm.
in my mind, that posture of what you're talking about, a partnership, it flows from this idea of let's understand what our unique area of skill, of focus, of attention is. Let's understand who we are. And then let's figure out what are the other pieces in missions? What are the other pieces in a broader set of poverty alleviation? What are the other things that are necessary in the communities where we serve? And let's join in with them. So
Hmm.
I think for me, that's one of the huge benefits of be great at what you are doing and then be open to truly to partnerships where what you do together extends beyond what if we were just doing it our own, what we'd be able to accomplish.
Wow, that's a great perspective. I really like that. So, how can the concepts of rooting for rivals be applied to the for profit world, influenced by the competitive realities of capitalism? And we've been talking a lot about nonprofits and what that looks like. And there is an element of huge mission at play when you're in a nonprofit. Same can be said for profit organizations, but how do we take this concept and apply it there?
I think it's really interesting to look at a story of contrasts where you have Ray Kroc, the quote unquote founder of McDonald's, who was a cutthroat capitalist. And he famously said that if any of his competitors were drowning, he'd stick a hose in their mouth and turn on the water. And he went on to say, this is rat eat rat, dog eat dog. This is the American way of survival of the fittest. Is that really the only way to see? Like, is that the only way to approach? And then you have someone like Robert Mondavi, who had a vineyard on Southern California and ended up going and traveling to Europe. And he had this crazy approach that every time he would go and he would meet some of the best winemakers, he would come back and then he would invite his competition and to share what he had learned. And the result is he was involved in not just having his company, but he ended up being an instrumental figure in putting Napa Valley on the map.
Wow.
Uh, and so I do wonder whenever someone says, you know, there's only room for me, of course there's competition and of course you want to have a high performance, but I don't know, is there another approach to turning on the hose when your competitor is drowning? Like, is there actually a potential benefit of being in relationship with others and still being great competitors, but doing with it a spirit of perhaps a little more openness, a little more kindness, and maybe trying to live out what Jesus invited us to of loving God and loving our neighbor. Maybe there are ways for us to love even our competition, and maybe good things would come from that. So there's a whole host of unexpected partnerships. There's a whole host of unexpected gifts that come from the private sector too, about examples where people refused to just hunker down and hold on and actually entered into a relationship and had a vision that was bigger than just their particular company.
Wow. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's amazing. All right. So, kind of winding down here, I just want to see if you have any final thoughts or any final challenges for us as we think about this concept and incorporating that into our lives, whether we are in a for profit company, if we're in a nonprofit organization, if we're supporting a nonprofit organization, whatever our role is, whatever we're doing. Any other final thoughts that you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, the first thought is to you and the Ronald Blue Trust team, but thank you for having this conversation. I love that there are more and more examples. And I guess that's really the invitation is let's be on the lookout. Let's actively be on the lookout for more ways that we might try to figure out how to cooperate instead of compete, to collaborate instead of hunker down, And I think good things are in store when we do. So I guess maybe the thought is, so what's one thing? What's one thing that we can do? And maybe for some, that's saying, I just need to know my competition. And whether you're at a
Yeah.
church, there's another church down the road that people keep asking, so how are you different from them? Or there are some of those organizations that when you hear it, you have that little bit, we might not call it jealousy or envy, but that twinge of, there's a little bit something going on here. Maybe we just reach out in friendship and get to know people. Maybe it's just spending a little more time. Maybe it's actively as a team praying for those that the world would look at and say, that's your competition. I love when I'm at a church and that church actively prays for other churches in the area. What a crazy outward approach. I love that. Maybe it's thinking a little bit more about our generosity, and I want to be an active supporter of other nonprofit organizations that are in a similar space that I think are doing great work as a simple sign. So all kinds of simple but practical steps that even if we don't fully feel in our heart like we're ready to root for our rivals, I think these actions of prayer and relationship and generosity, if we do that, I think our hearts follow along sometimes as well. So maybe just start taking some small steps to grow in relationship and generosity in a step towards more open-handed collaboration.
I love that. Well, we will certainly do that. Thank you so much, Peter. You are overflowing with wisdom. It is clear that the Lord has blessed you in the work that Hope International is doing. And I'd have to believe that so much of that is because of your just determination to hold open hands with Hope International and the work God is doing. And I just know that He is just going to continue to honor that. We are incredibly honored to be having this conversation with you and to be able to share this in our own network. So thank you so much, Peter. It was such an honor.
Thank you. And ultimately, that's the punchline, right? Is for us to get out of the way so the focus can be on the one who really deserves all the credit for anything good that happens. Everything good that happens, not from us or for us. So thank you, Timber. Great to be with you.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you everyone else for listening and watching today. If this conversation prompts any questions for you, feel free to connect with your Ronald Blue Trust advisor, or feel free to email me at ronblue.com. We'll have that email on the screen so you can get that right. And we will connect you with someone on our team. And if you are interested in learning more about Hope International and the work that Peter and his team are doing there, please visit hopeinternational.org or connect with me, and I would be happy to connect you with a local Hope International representative. Thank you so much for joining us as we seek to provide you with wisdom for wealth for life.